I knew Bill Blatty years ago when Blake Edwards invited me to read his script of the feature film of Peter Gunn. And it had been co-written by Blake and Bill Blatty. I read the script and I found it severely wanting. And I went in for a meeting with Blake, and Blake brought Blatty into the meeting where I severely criticized the script and told both Bill and Blake that I thought that it was basically a travesty of a quite marvelous television series. And Blake became furious and outraged that my comments were of a highly critical nature. But Blatty later told me that he thought I was absolutely right. He felt that the script had gotten away from both of them, and it wasn't something that he was very proud of having done either. And I remember him telling me how much he admired my honesty. He had never heard of a director who was going up for a job criticizing the screenplay that had been co-written by the producer. Needless to say, I didn't get that job. I didn't direct the feature film of Peter Gunn, but evidently the encounter left something in Blatty's mind that impressed him about me. Whenever possible, I tried to play moments in one take without a lot of intercutting, without a lot of cutting around. I always would look for a setup that seemed to say it all. So in this shot, you have the background of Georgetown University. It's at the end of a working day where Chris McNeil and her crew have finished. And I set up a shot that would both pan and track and move away from the campus with Chris without doing it in a series of cuts. As Chris is walking along, she encounters two nuns whose habits are sort of blowing in the wind. And I put that shot very close to a shot of a guy on a motorbike and children running past her in Halloween costume. It's a juxtaposition of the idea of good and evil on the one hand, evil being represented by Halloween and good being represented by the nuns. I think there's a natural menace to people about guys on motorbikes, but that might be subjective. It is an image that I saw while walking in Georgetown myself.
Hi, how'd your day go? Oh, not too bad. It's kind of like the Walt Disney version of the Ho Chi Minh story, but other than that...
After I was signed to direct the picture, Bill said, "I have a surprise for you," and he handed me a complete screenplay of The Exorcist that he had written. I didn't know he had undertaken this because I was about to start work with him on developing a script. So I read his script, and lo and behold, I felt that it was just not very good. I thought he had departed significantly from the novel. I thought that everything had been pumped up. And I thought that what he emphasized in that first draft screenplay was the horror film aspects of the story rather than the deep spiritual content that was there that was certainly terrifying enough when treated factually. I told Bill then I thought his script was not very good, and I wanted to start over and stay right with the novel. I wanted to adapt the novel as it was, without any significant changes and no heightened emphasis of the horror aspects of it. And so we set out to work together on a screenplay that was drawn almost verbatim from his book. I should have perhaps clarified the fact that this sequence that begins in the subway station is in Manhattan. Were I doing it all over again, I would put a subtitle in there that says Manhattan, because a lot of people are not aware that Karras has left Georgetown. But I guess at that time, this was the 70s, don't forget, and we gave people a lot of credit for trying to figure out what was going on in a film themselves without leading them through it every step of the way.
I'm a Catholic.
The drunk has a very distinctive voice when he asks Father Karras if he could help an old altar boy. You later hear this voice spoken by Regan when she's possessed, and it becomes one of those unusual elements that is meant to distract Karras. Did he actually hear this voice repeated by Reagan, or is it something that jumped into his mind in a particularly trying moment of his life? That little moment is simply there to establish this very peripheral character's presence in the film for a more important use later in the film. Where Father Karras goes to visit his mother, it is an actual apartment. It's an interior right where the exterior was shot, somewhere in the West 50s on the west side of Manhattan. Everything that's in this apartment is as we found it, except the props, the photos of young Karras, the girl that might have been his girlfriend. But all the furniture and the wallpaper and everything else is as it was. We put up a crucifix on the wall and as I say, the personal objects, but all the rest of it is as I found it. I thought it was a perfect setting for how Karras' mother would live.
Mama.
The woman who plays Karras' mother is a woman called Vasiliki Maliaros. And yes, we met her in a Greek restaurant. The casting director, Lou DeGimo, did. And he brought her to me, and of course she was perfect. She had done some acting in Greek theater, and she spoke perfect Greek, and she's quite marvelous in the film. She's one of the reasons I think the film works. She is authentic. She'll remind many people of their own mother, especially people whose parents come from the old country.
Okay.
She's a very vulnerable woman. She is almost a typical old country mother. So many people could identify with her appearance and her attitude. And she has elements of my own mother and my own relationship with my mother, as Blatty's relationship with his mother was similar to the relationship that he created for Karras and his mother. So, yes, I knew very well that, or I tried to make this relationship resonate with an audience, and I think the feature that most helps that is the casting of this woman, Vasiliki Maliaros.
All right, I'm fine. Really, I am.
Here it comes. There.
Oh, look at
Like
that.
it?
Oh, it's so
The studio originally, Warner Brothers, wanted one of three actresses, either Audrey Hepburn or Jane Fonda or Anne Bancroft. And I thought those were good ideas. And the studio approached all three of them. They started with Audrey Hepburn. And Audrey Hepburn agreed to make the film if we would have filmed it in Rome. She lived in Rome at that time. She was married to an Italian doctor, and she didn't want to leave Rome. And so they suggested to me that if I would go and meet with her, I could probably convince her to do the film if I would agree to shoot it in Rome. Well, I had no interest in wanting to make this film in Rome. I had absolutely no sense that we could do it any better technically anywhere else but with a United States crew and facilities. So I declined to do that. And so they then moved on to Anne Bancroft, who they quickly learned was interested, but she was in her, first month of pregnancy. Then Jane Fonda was approached, and she turned the film down flat. Meanwhile, Ellen Burstyn had called me and said that she wanted to play the part. I knew who she was only from the supporting roles that she had done in films up to then. And I found her to be, absolutely brilliant. and highly intelligent and highly knowledgeable about what The Exorcist was all about and its deeper implications. And I got interested in her doing this part, even though I knew the studio wanted a major star, which at the time she certainly wasn't. So when I went to the head of Warner Brothers at that time, Ted Ashley, and told him, now that we've been through Fonda and Audrey Hepburn and Bancroft, I would like to go to Ellen Burstyn. And I remember Ted Ashley saying to me, Bill, you know, I have complete faith in you and complete trust in what you'll do with this film, but Ellen Burstyn will play this part over my dead body. There's no way I'm going to give the lead in this picture to Ellen Burstyn. Please understand that. And one thing led to another. We couldn't agree on anyone else, and ultimately the role sort of fell to Ellen.
You can bring Mr. Dennings if you like.
Mr. Dennings?
Well, you know, it's okay.
This scene between Ellen and Linda was in fact improvised, and the interesting thing about it is that by the time Ellen and Linda came to film this scene, they had formed a kind of mother-daughter relationship. This scene was real. Linda came to look up to and to love and respect Ellen, and that's why they're able to play this scene so easily together, so intimately, and with such genuine affection for one another. I spent a lot of time getting them together as friends.
Bert just comes around here a lot because, well, he's lonely. Don't got nothing to do.
No, I heard differently.
Oh, you did? What did you hear? Huh?
I don't know.
Oh, come
I
on.
just
what did you
thought.
hear? Well, you didn't think so good.
How do you know?
Because Burke and I are just friends. Okay? Really?
Okay.
You ready for sleep?
Night.
Good night, honey.
The fellow who plays the scene with Jason Miller here in the bar is Reverend Tom Birmingham, who was a technical advisor on the film. He was one of Blatty's teachers when Blatty went to Brooklyn Prep High School. He was a very early influence on Bill Blatty and one of the people who urged him to write the novel The Exorcist. When I met Tom Birmingham, I thought he was ideal. I mean, he was a wonderful character, great face. He's not an actor. He is still a priest at Fordham University in New York. But he was very helpful to me as a technical advisor, and so I cast him in a small but pivotal role as a priest in the film. The lighting in this scene, in this actual tavern in Georgetown, was a student hangout, is modeled after the lighting of Rembrandt. And I took Owen Roisman, the cinematographer, to the Metropolitan Museum in New York and showed him a group of Rembrandt portraits that are collected there. And he, of course, was familiar with Rembrandt lighting, but we decided to play this particular scene as an homage to Rembrandt's portrait lighting. We're not the only ones to have done that. I mean, Rembrandt is a great source of inspiration to photographers and cinematographers, and has been and always will be.
Maybe the circuit is busy.
Oh, circuit's my ass. He doesn't give a shit.
How you let me...
No, I've got it, Sharon. It's all right. Yes.
What Blatty is always trying to suggest is that there are certain notions that are creeping into Reagan's mind that could perhaps be affecting her behavior. She hears her mother swearing later, and that's perhaps where the little girl has learned to use profanity, and it's a profanity that she later employs to a terrible extent. All of the ideas that are later distorted by the demon in Reagan were actually things from her own life, from her mother's separation from her father, from Reagan's longing for her own father.
You're kidding me.
There is a still photograph next to Ellen's bed, and I felt it was a characteristic pose. The fact that she appears to be that way in a penultimate scene after the exorcism is just simply a reflection of that's typical of her behavior.
What are you doing here?
My bed was shaking. I can't get to sleep.
Honey.